Have you ever looked around and felt like you were seeing something others couldn't? Perhaps you found yourself in a room full of people, yet felt a deep sense of isolation, because you can feel everything beneath the surface that no one is willing to acknowledge. You're hyper-aware, constantly scanning the energy of those around you, aware of what they aren't saying. It's an ability that can be as insightful as it is painful. For those who have this gift, it doesn't feel like a choice, it's just how they are. The ability to perceive deeper truths and to see through the veils people wear is instinctive, but it comes at a cost, because while others live comfortably in their ignorance, those who see too much are left to carry the weight of truths that others may not be ready to face. Jung called this dangerous perception. He didn't mean that it was a flaw. Instead, he described it as a rare gift, one that brings profound insight, but also invites alienation. Those who see deeply often find themselves alone, not because they want to be, but because the world around them can't handle their depth. Their awareness, their sensitivity, causes discomfort in others, forcing them to confront what they'd prefer to ignore. And the seer, well, they often find themselves in a quiet kind of pain, isolated, misunderstood, but never truly free of the weight of what they perceive. The cost of seeing more than others. To have dangerous perception is to see contradictions everywhere. You notice when people smile but their eyes don't match. You hear when someone says, "I'm fine," but you feel the subtle tremor of their unspoken fears. It's exhausting to live this way, because no conversation ever feels truly genuine. Instead of participating, you're constantly processing, analyzing, decoding. This skill is not a choice, it's wired into your nervous system. From the moment you meet someone, you're already mapping their emotions. You can feel the energy in the room before anyone speaks, and you often know what's unsaid long before it's revealed. But this awareness comes at an emotional cost. You're drained by interactions that feel shallow, that carry no emotional resonance. Small talk becomes painful because it forces you to wear a mask, just like everyone else, pretending to be something you're not. And when you're constantly absorbing emotional energy from everyone around you, it doesn't take long before you start to feel empty yourself. You begin to question, why does everyone seem so comfortable in their ignorance? While you're here, painfully aware of every little detail that doesn't align with the truth. When empathy becomes overwhelm, Jung was clear that with great perception comes great emotional sensitivity. You don't just perceive your own emotions, you absorb the emotions of others. This blurring of boundaries between self and other is what Jung referred to as participation mystique. In modern terms, we might call it emotional absorption. Have you ever walked into a crowded room and felt a wave of anxiety without knowing why? Or spent time with a friend and found yourself suddenly overwhelmed with sadness, even though they hadn't said anything about being upset? This is the price of emotional sensitivity. It's not just your own feelings you carry, it's everyone's. Neuroscience supports this. Mirror neurons allow us to feel what others are feeling. But for people with heightened emotional sensitivity, these neurons are constantly firing, picking up on every subtle emotional cue. And the more empathetic you are, the more you absorb. This can be incredibly overwhelming. It's why alone time becomes so necessary. Not to escape the world, but to recalibrate your sense of self. Without time alone to reset, the constant emotional influx can erode your identity. Jung emphasized that solitude is not a luxury, it's a necessity for individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. But in a world that never stops, it can be hard to carve out the space to reconnect with yourself. Solitude feels like an act of rebellion, not because it's selfish, but because society doesn't value time spent in quiet reflection. But for those who see too much, solitude is a lifeline. It's the only time when you can fully hear your own thoughts without them being drowned out by everyone else's noise. The mask we wear to survive. As you navigate a world that demands constant emotional adaptation, you begin to wear masks. It's not because you want to hide, it's because you've learned to survive this way. There's a version of you for work, another for your family, and yet another for your friends. These personas aren't lies, but survival strategies. They're how you make it through the day without getting overwhelmed by the weight of the world's expectations. But this fragmentation comes with a cost. Jung described the persona as a mask, a useful mask, but a dangerous one when mistaken for the true self. The more you suppress your real emotions to fit into these different roles, the more you lose touch with who you truly are. And eventually, the mask becomes your prison. You begin to feel like a puppet, pulled by strings you can't see, playing roles that others expect of you, all while your true self is buried beneath the surface. The tension of living as a performance. The tension between who you are and who you are expected to be can be unbearable. You're exhausted, but not from doing too much. You're exhausted because you're not being yourself. You're not living authentically. You're playing a part, trying to keep everyone else comfortable, all while your inner world begins to crumble from the weight of unexpressed truths. And then, once in a while, you meet someone who sees you, truly sees you. No mask, no performance, just you. It's rare, but in those moments, you remember what it feels like to be recognized for your depth, for your true self, not the one you've molded to survive. But those moments are fleeting, and when they pass, you're left with the aching knowledge that the world requires you to wear a mask. It's a subtle form of isolation, the constant reminder that while you are capable of seeing deeply, the world around you isn't always ready to meet you where you are. The world doesn't just want you to look good, it demands it. As a child, you were praised for being pretty, told that being attractive was the easiest way to get ahead. Beauty, you were taught, opens doors. Beauty lets you be heard. Beauty makes you lovable, desirable, worthy. But somewhere along the way, that compliment turned into a rule that said your worth was wrapped up in your appearance, that the more beautiful you were, the more valuable you became. And so, you began to perform. You weren't just putting on makeup to look nice. You were putting on makeup to belong. You weren't just dressing up for fun. You were dressing to feel seen, to feel safe. But every time you adapted yourself to meet someone else's standard of beauty, you chipped away a little bit of your true self. Every compliment you received for your looks reinforced the message that this was the part of you that mattered. And so you became this image, a perfect reflection of what others wanted, but not a reflection of who you were underneath. The mask fit so well that you forgot it was a mask. The mask you wear, beauty as a survival strategy. This mask wasn't just for show, it was a survival mechanism. If you kept up the appearance, you stayed loved, liked, accepted. If you were beautiful enough, you could avoid criticism, rejection, or abandonment. In a world that worships appearance, it's easier to be seen as beautiful than to be seen as deep. It's safer to be acknowledged for your looks than for your mind or heart. But what happens when you begin to question the performance? What happens when you begin to realize that the attention, the praise, and the affection you receive aren't truly for you, they're for the mask you wear? This realization hits hard. You've built your whole identity around the approval of others, around fitting in, around being seen as perfect. But now, nothing feels real anymore. You start to wonder, who am I beneath this mask? Am I more than just what I look like? Is there something deeper that deserves to be recognized? The false safety of perfection. For years, perfection has been your shield. It's what keeps people from seeing the cracks, from noticing the vulnerability, from pointing out the parts of you that haven't been fully explored. You've perfected the art of appearing like you have it all together, like your life is flawless, like you're the complete package. But perfection is exhausting, and it's fragile. You can't maintain it forever. You can't keep wearing the mask without eventually losing the real you. But if you slip, if you let your guard down, if you stop performing, then what? The thought of revealing your true self is terrifying because you've spent so long believing that your worth is tied to the mask. You think, if I stop being perfect, will I still be loved? Will I still be enough? And this is where the real conflict lies. You're afraid that without the mask, you'll disappear. The mask of perfection and the cost of its maintenance. Every compliment you receive for your looks, every bit of attention, every wow from strangers, only reinforces the idea that this is all you need to do. This is enough. But with each passing day, the mask becomes heavier. It becomes a prison. The constant upkeep, the need to stay perfect for others, drains you emotionally. You have to look perfect for everyone else, but you never stop to ask if you are being true to yourself. And when you do start to ask, you're confronted with the uncomfortable truth. You've been so busy being beautiful enough for the world that you've forgotten how to be beautiful for yourself. You've turned the act of self-love into something external, something that depends on the approval of others. But true beauty, real beauty, is never about meeting others' standards. It's about connecting with the parts of yourself that have been hidden, neglected, or ignored. And that's the turning point. The moment you realize you're not who you've been told to be. One day, you wake up and look at yourself in the mirror, not to check your makeup or your outfit, but to look at who you really are. And in that moment, you realize that you've been wearing someone else's version of you for far too long. You see the cracks. You see the parts of yourself that you've buried in order to survive. You feel the weight of the mask pressing against your skin, and it feels suffocating. It's not just your appearance that feels wrong, it's your identity. You've become someone else to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. You've been playing a role for so long that you don't know where the mask ends and you begin. The first step to awakening is realizing that the person you've been pretending to be isn't you at all. The second step is letting go of that person. And the third step, reclaiming the parts of yourself you've lost. The moment you begin to let go. Letting go is not as simple as shedding old clothes. It's a process. It's not instant. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm done with this performance. It takes time. It takes courage. It takes the willingness to face the uncomfortable reality that the version of you that was loved for being perfect may not be the version of you that is happiest or healthiest. But when you start to let go, when you start to unmask, you begin to feel the freedom that comes with living authentically. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to hear your own voice again, not as a faint whisper beneath the noise of others' expectations, but as a powerful call to return to yourself. In this moment, you realize the true you was always there. You just have to start listening.